In a world set in the not-so-distant future, completely immersive virtual reality games had become commonplace, earning them a reputation for being retro. As a result, there were very few masterpieces in gaming, and an overwhelming number of game releases were considered trash. Their designs fell far short of the graphic technological capabilities of the time. Despite most people dismissing these games, which made sense since they were admittedly terrible, some individuals found a unique fascination with them. After all, there's a taste for everything. These people who dedicated themselves to playing these lousy games came to be known as bad game hunters. Our protagonist, Rakuro Hizutome, a high school junior, was one of them. The anime starts with Rakuro defeating the final boss in one of these terrible games called Faria Chronicle Online. In this game, the villain was an evil deity. After the deity's defeat, the game's main character, Faria, was overjoyed because her journey had come to an end. But just as Rakuro completed the game, he delivered a swift kick to Faria's face, declaring that she was the real culprit behind all the game's problems, thus putting an end to one of the worst lousy games Rakuro had ever played. He felt greatly relieved and happy that the suffering was finally over, akin to a prisoner who had just been set free. This made him eager to find his next bad game, just to experience that sensation all over again. The next day, Rakuro began his day as usual, snacking before heading to school. His mother had a collection of insects, indicating her passion for entomology. Rakuro mentioned to his mother that one of her butterflies had escaped its cage before leaving for school. At school, students discussed their plans for the upcoming summer vacation, which was starting the next day. Meanwhile, a girl named Rie Sega, also a high school junior, who clearly had a crush on Rakuro, observed him from afar, trying to muster the courage to approach him. She rehearsed a conversation in her mind, intending to use game as a conversation starter, as she knew it was something Rakuro liked. However, her attempt was foiled when one of Rakuro's friends approached him, thwarting any opportunity for her to get closer. After school, Ria visited a game rental store called Rock Roll, where the manager, Mana Iwamaki, was preparing the store for the summer vacation rush. When Ria entered the store, Mana greeted her and, noticing Ria looking around, informed her that Rakuro wasn't there. Ria tried to cover up the real reason for her visit, saying she was looking for new games, but it was evident that she was infatuated with Rakuro. Mana, however, saw through her intentions and revealed that Rakuro wouldn't be showing up anytime soon. She explained that Rakuro had challenged himself to play a particularly terrible game for quite some time, which had kept him away from the store. Mana then showed Ria a game that one of their customers was renting. The game had terrible ad for allies, extremely difficult enemy attacks, and was riddled with bugs. This made Faria Chronicle Online, legendary in the realm of bad games, a perfect fit for bad game hunters, as it required a lot of skill, even to get past the first challenge. Unbeknownst to them, Rakuro had already completed the game, and he arrived at the store at that moment to return it and ran an even more challenging game. When Ria saw her crush entering the store, she hastily hid, lacking the courage to face him. Rakuro excitedly began recounting his experience with Faria Chronicle Online to Mana, expressing how it was the ultimate terrible game. He explained that the protagonist, Faria, was incredibly annoying, causing all the problems in the game. She killed her group mates, irritated the villagers, and halted the journey whenever she got upset. To make things worse, she always blamed the final boss for everything, a character that Rakuro couldn't help but despise. The game even allowed players to take out their frustration by beating Faria for 3 minutes as a reward for defeating the final boss. Rakuro described how achieving this was a deeply purifying experience for him. While Rakuro enthusiastically spoke of how terrible the game was, Rai observed him from a distance. He mentioned that he had no idea how to find a game that surpassed the level of awfulness of that one. Mana then proposed something new. She told Rakuro about a new game in the store called Shangri-La Frontier, a game that was the complete opposite of terrible, widely regarded as a successful virtual reality game with over 30 million players. Confronted with something entirely different from what he was accustomed to, Rakuro accepted the challenge and took the legendary bad game home. There, he did some research on this new game and found out that it had set a record for the highest number of simultaneous players. Rakuro then read the game's synopsis, learning that it was set in a world 1,000 years after a space colony had vanished during a journey through the universe, leaving behind a new human society where players lived freely with medieval technology. He reflected on how this world was much more intriguing than the one he had previously played. After finishing his canned drink, Rakuro finally installed the game on his computer, eager to start playing a genuinely good game after spending so much time on terrible ones. When he logged in, he began by creating his character, needing to choose a class, and was impressed by the sheer number of options the game offered. Rakuro ended up selecting a dual-wielding mercenary class, finding it flexible. Next, he chose his character's nativeness as a wanderer to gain bonuses to luck, which increased his critical hit rate and the chance to obtain items in the game. Lastly, he customized his character's appearance, once again amazed by the vast array of choices, from body type and race to even tiny details like adjusting the eyes and hair. However, he realized he was getting a bit too emotional being so accustomed to playing low-quality games. He decided to focus on creating his first detailed character instead. The final result wasn't all that rich in details, as Rakuro chose to leave his character almost entirely without clothing or accessories. This was because his gameplay style involved ignoring armor to sell his initial equipment for a better weapon. However, to avoid people recognizing his character as a nudist, he added the only available mask, resulting in a character with little clothing and a bird-like face. Another quirk of Rakuro was his habit of always naming his characters Sunraku, a fusion of his first and second names. Once everything was ready, he followed the game's instructions and lay down in a stable place. He skipped the prologue, eager to begin his first divine game. From the start, he was impressed by the game's level of detail, and the experience of moving within it felt almost lifelike. He started exploring by running and climbing trees, getting a better view of the in-game forest and being enchanted by the landscape. Next, he opened his map, surprised that he didn't start in a beginner tutorial city. He didn't know that choosing Wanderer as his nativeness would place him randomly as a beginner. However, since the initial map was straightforward, Rakuro easily located the nearest city called Firstia, located to the east. After orienting himself, Rakuro began walking towards the city, learning more about the game, such as his character's low defense due to the lack of armor or any protection on his body. Yet he decided to trust the luck bonus he had gained by choosing to be a wanderer. Right at that moment, Rakuro was attacked by a goblin, and it was time to use his two swords for the first time. He managed to defeat the creature with a single blow since it was a beginner-level enemy. This allowed Rakuro to level up and even acquire the goblin's axe. However, he had barely finished his first fight when he noticed another enemy approaching. Unlike the goblin, this was a much faster and more dangerous Vorpal rabbit, which almost dealt a fatal blow to Rakuro. Seconds after the first attack, it lunged again, but Rakuro blocked it with his swords and managed to land the first blow on the rabbit. However, it proved stronger than the goblin, being defeated only after Rakuro's second attack. Being a tougher enemy, his character gained 2 levels instead of just 1, but the rabbit didn't leave behind any weapons. Rakuro was disappointed because he had really wanted the rabbit's knife. The game then showed him that he could learn new abilities by using certain actions, which once again left Rakuro impressed by the game's quality. Realizing how effective defensive and dodging skills were even against higher-level enemies, he wished to try various combat styles. At that moment, Rakuro finally noticed that he hadn't encountered a single bug in the game so far, which was rare for him because in lousy games, there were bugs everywhere, such as things becoming invisible, the ability to pass through walls that shouldn't be passed through, and not being able to attack an enemy even when close to it. He was becoming increasingly enamored with this divine game and was determined to make the most of every minute he spent playing, all in the hopes of acquiring that Vorpal rabbit's knife. After a long time of playing and facing enemies in the forest, he gained new abilities and more experience points, reaching level 12 and becoming much more advanced than before. Moreover, he finally got the rabbit's knives he had desired after defeating 50 of them, concluding that it was indeed a rare enemy, as it didn't appear as frequently as he'd hoped, requiring a lot of gameplay to find all of them. Despite the effort, it was worth it because the 2 knives were better than the swords he had. So after allocating some points, Rakuro decided to move forward to find even stronger enemies since the area he was in was for beginners. However, when he opened the map, he realized he was much closer to the city of Secondale now than to Firstia, with only a bridge to cross to get there. As he reached the bridge, he encountered the first true adversary in the game, a giant snake blocking the bridge. It was necessary to defeat her to cross. Rakuro noticed that the game recommended facing the giant snake with a group of 3 people, which excited him even more as it made facing the enemy alone without using any defense even more challenging. He was truly enjoying getting to know the legendary game Shangri-La Fronty. Meanwhile, in Firstia, the starting city, all the players were impressed by someone's gear who clearly wasn't a beginner and had no reason to be there. However, that character was Ri, who had come to Firstia to find Rakuro because she knew he used the same character name in every game he played. But she was frustrated not to find him there, not understanding why since every beginner player went to that city. Back with Rakuro, he began to battle the voracious Cobra, first planning to discover her attacks and movements, thinking that by doing so, she would be an easy opponent to defeat, especially because he couldn't afford to take any damage as that snake would undoubtedly finish him off with a single strike. Rakuro was quite confident that his plan would work, but as soon as he tried to make his first strike, his sword broke, making him realize how tough the snake's scales were. Still, Rakuro remained confident and armed himself with the two machetes he had obtained by defeating the rabbits, as they were stronger than the swords. He prepared to strike again, but the cobra was faster and hit him with a poisonous liquid that would cause damage every 10 seconds. Rakuro still thought it would be easy to win the battle, having conquered much harder games before, even though he now had a limited time of 4 minutes to defeat his opponent, as his life would end due to the poison after that. Rakuro believed he needed to find the cobra's weak point, but he had already noticed that in that game, nothing was random and critical hits were activated by landing an ideal blow or hitting the enemy's weak spot. He thought that being a snake covered in tough scales, her weak point should be the head, but Rakuro realized it was hard to hit it, leaving him with the option of creating a critical point. He struck a part of the cobra's body, creating a wound. With this, all he had to do was keep hitting that same spot to deal critical damage. However, even though his plan worked, the cobra had a lot of HP, and she managed to attack him, forcing Rakuro to dodge and stop his blows. In a matter of seconds, the cobra's wound healed, and Rakuro finally realized he had been overly confident just because he had cleared much lousier games, having acted arrogantly thinking he would defeat a strong opponent like her without taking any damage. The cobra managed to grab Rakuro by the mouth, but even though he knew he had underestimated that enemy, he wasn't willing to give up. Rakuro managed to free himself from the cobra's mouth and quickly struck her on the head. Then he sheathed one of his swords to hold her hair, and with his other hand, he launched another attack, finally defeating the boss of that area. With this, he reached level 14 and celebrated his victory, realizing that he had received snake scales and hair as a prize, which should be worth a decent amount of money. However, he received another dose of poison, finally remembering that he was still at risk of dying. Quickly, he allocated all the points he had earned in agility and energy to reach the city in time to buy an antidote. But he realized he didn't know where the shops were because he had never been to that city before. So it seemed less risky for him to look for respawn points, so that when he died, he would have the game saved. But Rakuro also didn't know where the respawn points were, meaning the situation was pretty dire for him. In the city, we see a couple talking. The girl, Mia, says she wants to tame a canine monster because she couldn't have pets in her apartment. But in this game, it was possible to train some critters. She asked for his help in doing so, calling the guy by his real name. He asked her to use his character's name, Reiji, within the game. He was super happy that after 3 months, he had convinced Mia, the girl he liked, to play that game, allowing him to demonstrate all his knowledge in that world. Suddenly, the two see a guy with a bird-like face running towards them in a panic. Mia thinks it's a monster and prepares to attack, but luckily, Reiji realizes that he has a character's name and explains that if she attacks, she'll become a player killer with a skull in front of her name, which Mia clearly didn't want to happen. Reiji deduces that Rakuro's desperation must be due to the snake's poison, so he shouts to him that the inn is in a white building right at the entrance of the city, where Rakuro can set his respawn point by lying in one of the beds there. Rakuro thanks him for the help and runs in the direction he pointed out, while Reiji explains to Mia that in the beginning, it's quite common for players to show up in the city desperate after being hit by the snake's poison. Reiji also understands that Rakuro sold his clothes and weapons to focus on agility, making Mia think he's very experienced. This makes Reiji quite happy and grateful to Rakuro for giving him the opportunity to show his knowledge to Mia. Meanwhile, in the inn, he finally arrives there and the attendant starts explaining how it works to rent a room. But Rakuro was desperate because his life would end at any moment, so he dismisses the explanations and quickly asks for a room, managing to reach the bed just in time as shortly after lying down, his HP reaches 0 and he receives the penalty for death. He disconnects from the game and thinks about how he narrowly avoided losing any items, realizing that he would have to thank Reiji for showing him where the inn was. Afterward, he walks through Secondale, this being his first city in the game. Rakuro then decides he needs a map, some recovery items, and new equipment, as he needs a more powerful main weapon to replace his starting dual swords. Suddenly, he realizes that all the players are staring at him, finding it strange to see a guy with a bird-like face who's practically half naked. This makes Rakuro think it might be a good idea to get some more appropriate clothing. So he goes to a store and buys the cheapest outfit there, made of mud toad skin, which is resistant to cuts. His goal wasn't defense, but rather to stop other players from staring at him as if he were weird. However, he doesn't buy the whole outfit, ignoring the mask that comes with it, as he already had his bird mask. Then he goes to the weapon shop to see what's available, hoping to get a high-quality weapon. But as he examines the catalog, he realizes that his Vorpal mesh sheets are much superior to all the weapons there. The store owner explains that the mesh sheets are rare items in the game, and if he wants something better, he'll have to craft it. Rakuro asks if the shop owner could make a weapon for him, and the guy responds that he would if Rakuro brought the necessary raw materials. So Rakuro goes to the Swamp of Difficulties to find ore, the material needed to make his weapon. But even after a while, Rakuro only manages to get 2 ores, finding more common rock than anything else, while he needed at least 6 of them to make his weapon. He still had to deal with all the swamp mud that made his movements very difficult, in addition to the heavy pickaxe he bought, which didn't help his situation at all. Suddenly, a seemingly harmless mud toad appears. So, Rakuro decides to leave the creature alone to save himself the trouble. However, the toad jumps, splattering mud all over him, testing his patience. Rakuro decides to attack the little monster and throws his pickaxe at it, knocking it down. Then he walks up to the creature, reflecting that, just like his leather outfit, which was made of mud toad skin and was resistant to blades, the toad must be as well. So he uses his axe for the first time, which he got from the goblin. But Rakuro becomes increasingly irritated due to the slowness of his steps caused by the mud hindering his character's movements. When Rakuro finally catches up to the toad, he hits it with his axe, easily defeating the monster. At this point, he sees 2 new characters in the game and thinks that with the summer vacation coming, many more players are likely to appear, which means that more players will soon be searching for materials. So Rakuro decides to continue mining to gather a good amount of raw materials before it becomes even harder to find ore with the increasing demand. After 3 hours, he manages to collect a substantial amount of ore. Then the weapon shop owner shows him the options he has with that material. But at this moment, he notices that Rakuro has also found the swamp coffin fossil, a rare material that can be used to craft the swamp dagger. Rakuro is impressed by the weapon and asks the shop owner to make 2 of those daggers for him. After Rakuro buys a map and a few other items, his 2 daggers are ready and he's amazed by how divine those weapons are. The shop owner explains that Rakuro should keep bringing materials to him to further enhance the weapons. At this moment, Rakuro realizes how the shop owner was conversing naturally, despite being a computer-controlled character, and he's impressed by the artificial intelligence. The man then warns Rakuro that it's not a good idea for him to leave the city at the moment because it's getting dark and the nighttime monsters are very dangerous. Rakuro thanks him for the warning, but he's someone who enjoys a good challenge and is eager to test his new weapons and advanced levels. In other words, the shop owner's warning only makes Rakuro more determined to leave the city at night to face the monsters. Meanwhile, Rei had already searched for Rakuro's character in all the starting areas, leaving only Secondale City. She faces the voracious Cobra and, being more advanced in the game, easily defeats her, thinking that only someone like Rakuro could manage to face such a tough opponent while still at the beginner level. At the same time, nearby, Rakuro starts to understand why the shop owner asked him not to leave the city at night, as the nighttime monsters were proving to be much stronger than the others, causing him to level up and gain new abilities. However, while fighting a red-hatted goblin, he realizes that the opponent is much stronger than a regular forest goblin, with a lot of HP, a unique fighting style, and the ability to summon multiple allies, a power that Rakuro thought should only be used by weaker monsters. Surrounded by the small creatures, Rakuro realizes he's in real trouble since even fighting just one of them was challenging enough. Even if he tried to escape, he didn't know if he would survive. But as he was enjoying the challenge, fleeing wasn't an option. He starts to fight the small goblins, but suddenly, he realizes he has underestimated the game once again because all the creatures are defeated due to the arrival of a new monster. Rakuro remembers that this wasn't just an ordinary game, it was divine. The opponent is a gigantic creature, a unique monster named Lekan, the Night Striker. Unfortunately for Rakuro, in the entire history of the Shangri-La Frontier game, no player had managed to defeat even one unique monster, as they were incredibly powerful and difficult to face. In the past, Rie was struggling to complete a very challenging game. She confided in Mana, the owner of the game store, about needing to find a way to finish it or else she'd never be able to embark on an adventure with Rakuro. So Mana suggested that Rie should play some flawless games to strengthen her skills since she didn't want to hold Rakuro back. This was the moment she introduced Rie to the divine game, Shangri-La Frontier, a game that any discerning gamer would want to check out. Rie mentioned that her sister enjoyed the game a lot, and Mana proposed that she should ask her sister to teach her everything she knew to become strong enough to guide Rakuro when he played. Rie accepted the challenge, determined to become proficient. However, what Mana didn't anticipate was that Rie would become addicted to Shangri-La Frontier. And so Rie became an exceptionally skilled player and set out to find Rakuro in the city of Secondale. There she crossed paths with Mia and Rigi, who informed her they had seen a character named Sumrako, which was Rakuro's in-game name. The two were taken aback by Rie's intimidating appearance. They explained that Rakuro used to wear a bird head and little clothing, but was now running because he had been poisoned by a snake, though they suggested he might have acquired new equipment. Rei realized that Rakuro had indeed managed to defeat the snake without visiting the first city, and as a token of gratitude for the information, she gave Mia and Riji a coordinates teleporter before speeding off in search of Rakuro. Mia inquired about who this player could be, and Riji speculated that based on her guild cloak, she belonged to a guild focused on unique monsters like Lycan, a night attacker. Since Mia didn't understand what these monsters were, Riji explained that they were a special class with a name and title. Most in-game monsters reappeared after being defeated, but unique monsters were a one-of-a-kind entity, rumored to have 7 in total. Nobody knew how to encounter them. Moreover, for each unique monster, there existed a guild formed by the best players to defeat that specific monster. So Rei was part of the guild designated to take down Lycan, the night attacker, who was currently standing in front of Rakuro. Lycan was essentially a powerful, gigantic black wolf that had swiftly defeated a group of red hat goblins, signifying that a single strike from him could reduce Rakuro's health to 0. Rakuro was paralyzed with fear as he gazed at Lycan, but after a while the monster finally launched an attack with its massive paw. Rakuro reacted quickly, defending himself with his new swords. Subsequently, Rakuro attempted to strike the wolf but had limited success. Nevertheless, he held on to hope, thinking it would be easy to defeat this unique monster. However, he knew that the battle would be challenging, and he was grateful for his new abilities gained from practicing all night, as without them he wouldn't have been able to block Lycan's attack. Rakuro had to remain vigilant as he managed to draw his knives and land a critical blow on the monster. They continued their battle with Rakuro doing well. Suddenly, the moon was obscured by clouds and Lycan vanished into thin air. Rakuro looked around searching for the creature when he realized it was right behind him. Rakuro merrily evaded it and managed another critical hit, but then Lycan disappeared once more. When it reappeared, the monster attacked Rakuro with full force, but Rakuro skillfully dodged every blow. However, the creature continued to vanish and reappear, making Rakuro wonder if the wolf could teleport. They continued their battle, and Rakuro noticed that Lycan's skin was even tougher than the cobra's scales, rendering his previous attacks ineffective. Despite delivering around 200 critical hits, Rakuro felt that he was making no progress in harming the monster. Furthermore, his Vorpei's blades, once nearly perfect, were now worn out. In other words, unless Rakuro could find a vulnerable spot on the wolf, his weapon would be destroyed. Rakuro admitted that the monster was too powerful for someone of his level, yet he continued to enjoy the divine game, relishing every challenge. Rakuro faced Lycan, delivering one critical hit after another. However, after a while, Lycan prepared to launch an attack. Rakuro believed that Lycan wouldn't be able to reach him from that distance, but the wolf began to howl, creating such a loud noise that it shattered some nearby rocks and froze Rakuro in midair. At that moment, the clouds covered the moon once more and Lycan disappeared again. However, Rakuro couldn't move, and as he fell, his body started to disintegrate. When he finally hit the ground, the wolf was there once more, but Rakuro was no longer able to fight, with half of his body already disintegrated. He couldn't comprehend the nature of that attack, but he noticed that for some reason, even after such a powerful blow, he still had 1 HP remaining. Nevertheless, he knew it wouldn't last long as the wolf stood right before him and he was unable to fight. Rakuro recognized that this unique monster was as strong as its creators intended, a perfectly programmed adversary. However, this also meant that it was possible to defeat Lycan, and that's precisely why Rakuro decides that his goal will not be a final boss, but rather to defeat Lycan, the Mega-Attacker. And so, Rakuro's life comes to an end. He wakes up in Ian's bed in the city where his respawn point is and notices that he has some marks on his body. He then discovers that he's cursed by Lycan. It prevents him from using any kind of equipment on the affected areas, which is a significant portion of his body. So he'll have to go without any equipment, just as he was at the beginning of the game, only this time it's not by choice. Rakuro is furious with Lycan, who appeared out of nowhere, devoured him, and cursed him. Thanks to Lycan, Rakuro was left with no equipment. The curse also grants resistance to magical effects on the affected areas, makes lower-level monsters flee from the character, and affects conversations with NPCs. To make matters worse, the curse can only be removed through the prayer of a saint or by defeating Lycan, a type of curse that must be destroyed at its root. Rakuro walks through the city so angry about the situation that he begins to compare this divine game to the trash he used to play, while other people are frightened by his bird-headed appearance and lack of clothing, just as it happened at the beginning of the game. Despite this, Rakuro decides to stay calm and remember the 3 principles he learned from playing bad games. First, to have a patient heart. Second, to have an unshakable spirit. And lastly, to have decisiveness. So if he steps away from the crowd to think calmly about what to do and analyzes his character sheet, discovering that he gained a lot of experience from fighting a unique monster. He leveled up, improved his skills, and had 50 stat points to distribute. He decides to distribute the points carefully, but without any defense or attack equipment. He allocates the points as if he were made of paper, considering that any blow could end him. Therefore, he invests everything in speed and resistance, disregarding all other options. However, Rakuro's best stat is still his luck with 65 points, which is probably the reason he survived the unique monster's initial attack with just 1 HP. He thinks he's been through a lot and had enough bad luck, so he wishes to rely a bit on his luck. Suddenly, a rabbit jumps right on top of his head. Rakuro wonders if this is a Vorpal rabbit, but it's quite different from others, wearing little clothes and a top hat. He ponders whether monsters could actually appear in the city while the rabbit waves goodbye to him. Not knowing what's going on, Rakuro decides to follow the animal. The chase begins, and while running, he concludes that this rabbit is indeed quite different from others and must offer a rare item, thinking it's a game event. After some time running, he finally corners the animal, but magically, a door appears. The rabbit goes through it, and Rakuro approaches the door, discovering that it leads to the Rabbit Country, a unique game location. Then he remembers reading that despite Shangri-La Frontier having a vast world exploration storyline, it also features some hidden side quests that are unknown to the public. Nobody knows when or where they will appear or what they do. Therefore, the equipment, abilities, and spells that one can obtain in these unique settings are always of high level, which makes game clans search for them. Rakuro opens the door, observing everything around, and believes that his luck is at play for him to have found something so valuable so early in the game. He decides he can't let this opportunity pass and steps through the door. However, Rakuro didn't notice that the door recommended the player to be at least level 80, while he was only at level 28, not even halfway to the game's recommendation. Rakuro then falls into the rabbit country called Rabbits, where everywhere he looks, there are these creatures and objects have little rabbit ears. At this moment, he's startled because the rabbit he was chasing before is right behind him, welcoming him. The rabbit says that everyone in Rabbits was eager to meet him because Rakuro had the courage to face a unique monster alone. It goes on about how brave Rakuro is and how powerful Lycan is. After a while of the rabbit chattering, Rakuro finally remembers that affecting NPCs was one of the effects of his curse. Then the rabbit finally introduces itself as Emil and says that their leader wants to meet Rakuro. Emil starts guiding Rakuro to their leader's palace, and Rakuro is worried that the leader might seek revenge for all the rabbits he killed. However, Emil reassures him, saying that their leader is not that type. Upon arriving at the rabbit palace, Rakuro is impressed by the place, and Emil explains that despite many players visiting their country, Rakuro will be the first to see the palace. This makes him feel special, thinking that luck was finally on his side. Next, Emil leads Rakuro into a room in the palace and enters, announcing to his leader that he brought the human of the Vorpal soul to meet him. When Rakuro sees Rabbits' leader, Vizak, he becomes quite frightened by his appearance and intimidating demeanor. Vizak says he thought humans had no talent, but it seems one is different, leaving Rakuro paralyzed with fear. The next day at the Rockroll store, the manager once again catches Rie by surprise, trying to find Rakuro in the store. She asks Rie if she's heading to the dojo, and Rie confirms she is, but decided to stop by the store to see if there were any new games. Mana immediately informs her that Rakuro didn't go there that day. It's summer vacation, so he's probably gaming nonstop. Rie explains that since Rakuro always played with the nickname Sunraku, she tried to find him in the game. However, it seems he skipped the first tutorial city. The manager laughs and says it's typical of a fanatic for bad games. He'll probably encounter all sorts of unique scenarios. Rie agrees, saying it's not impossible. The manager wishes Rie good luck and tells her to confess her feelings to Sunraku. This makes Rie blush with embarrassment again. At Sunraku's house, we meet his sister named Rumi Hizutom. She's leaving for work and mentions she'll be back late. Sunraku doesn't pay much attention but gives her an okay. He's grabbing a can from the fridge while reading about the unique scenarios in Shangri-La on the internet. He finds an article about the Vorpal rabbit scenario, but it's different from what he experienced the previous day in the game. There he encountered a mafia boss rabbit that was as intimidating as Lycan. This boss introduces himself as the leader of Rabbits, which is the name of this unique rabbit scenario. The boss rabbit, Vizak, asks if Rakuro really fought the Toto, referring to Lycan. Vizak mentions that Rakuro has the Vorpal spirit, but Rakuro has no idea what that means. The boss rabbit offers to train Rakuro, and since this is a significant opportunity, he accepts right away. Rakuro is initially afraid he might have said something wrong, but the rabbit boss calmly tells him that since Rakuro requested his training, he's now Rakuro's little brother. The boss finishes by saying that for close friends like Rakuro, they can call him Vash, a privilege reserved for those he truly recognizes as having potential. Rakuro is relieved that he gave the right response. Vash asks the little rabbit to take care of Rakuro, who wants to show him the palace, but Rakuro has been playing for a long time and wants to rest a bit. Of course, he also wants to research more about unique scenarios and unique monsters. The little rabbit decides to show him their lodging instead. Rakuro is surprised that he can set a respawn point there. Before they leave, Vash mentions that he forgot something and throws a necklace toward Rakuro, who is utterly confused. It turns out to be a Vorpal Soul necklace. The user receives half the experience points but gains 2.5 times more status points. Rakuro tries to remove the necklace but is unsuccessful. It can't be removed unless the rabbit boss allows it. The little rabbit says the item suits Rakuro well, which annoys him because he now has another restriction. It dawns on Rakuro that the necklace is a significant advantage and somewhat overpowered. He realizes that nobody in the forums seems to know about this unique scenario that leads to the rabbit's palace or the necklace. It's a scenario that only he knows. He checks the time and realizes he has a commitment, complaining about a colleague named Katso and wondering why he had to invite him to this lousy game. The game he's talking about is Berserk Online Passion, abbreviated as BOP, but known for being a terrible game. Rakuro used to be addicted to it, and it's one of those lousy games. On the first day of release, the player base dropped to less than 100, meaning that most players are the same type, addicted to bad games. Sunraku meets his partner there, and the guy immediately wants to start fighting. Sunraku asks about the rules, and his friend says it's obvious that anything goes. The friend uses a technique that glitches his character and attacks him. Sunraku remains calm and responds with a series of quick punches. While they're fighting, two guys nearby realize that both Katso and Sunraku are fighting. This game is so crazy that the winner is the one who knows more about bugs because everything is buggy in this game. The fight ends with Sunraku losing because his friend knows more about the bugs in the game, and Sunraku has only been fighting NPCs. The friend recalls that when he heard Sunraku was playing Shangri-La, he thought it was a joke, but now asks if it's true. Sunraku has no shame in admitting he's addicted and mentions the 7 most powerful monsters in the game, of which only 4 names are known so far. The friend doesn't care, but Sunraku says he won't stop playing until he defeats the monster that humiliated him. Now, Katsu is convinced to start playing Shangri-La after this conversation. He asks Sunraku if he knows who else is playing Shangri-La. Sunraku has no idea, and the friend says he sent an email to someone letting them know that Sunraku is now playing Shangri-La Frontier, and it's a significant event. The scene then shifts to a woman wreaking havoc on some NPCs in Shangri-La. In fact, they are not NPCs, but other players, and she earns the player kill tag. She arrogantly mentions that she'll have to be nice to Rakuro, aka Sunraku. In his second-day alley, Sunraku enters the game again. Maybe due to playing a bit of trash games, he notices how easy the Shangri-La avatars are to maneuver. The little rabbit, Emil, asks where Sunraku wants to go. There are plenty of fun places in Rabbit's palace, like the arena, training ground, and more. Sunraku says all of that sounds interesting, but he wants to reach Third Dreama before it gets crowded. Since the summer vacation started, Firstia, the first city, is full of new players, and Secondale will soon be the same. Sunraku doesn't want to deal with congestion or fight over monsters and mining spots, so he's making a run for it. He's heard that Third Dreama is a large city, and if he's going to take the unique scenarios seriously, he prefers it to be from a spacious city. He asks Emil if she understands, but she has no idea what he's talking about and agrees with everything. She offers to help him get to the other city and invites him to join a group. Sunraku accepts and joins Emil's group, realizing that her stats are much better than his. Speed is the only stat where he's superior. He starts to wonder if Lekem's mark activated this unique scenario. He wonders if Emil, the little rabbit, is the game's way of compensating for this. As they are about to embark on their journey, 2 female players notice Emil and comment on how cute she is but wonder how someone has a Vorpal rabbit as a pet. They also notice the guy with a bird mask and get scared. Sunraku realizes he needs to get out of there as he doesn't want them to find out about the unique scenario of the Vorpal rabbits, so he takes off running. The players wonder how to tame one of those Vorpal rabbits, and as the guy runs away, one of them takes a screenshot of Sunraku with Emil on his arm, saving it to ask questions about it on the forums. This is the last thing Sunraku wanted. He runs until there are no more players around, and Emil comments that she's not suited for running around like that. Sunraku asks what they should do next, and he wants to confirm a part of the cursed text that says monsters lower level than him will flee. At that moment, a bizarre goat-like monster comes charging at Sunraku, but when it sees the mark, it stops in its tracks, turns around and leaves. With his theory confirmed, Sunraku runs to ambush the monster and gain a bonus attack for inertia. It's a law of physics that isn't typically considered in the real world, but few games try to replicate it. Emil is amazed by the attack and mentions that it was hard to tell which of the two was the monster. Sunraku now knows that even with the mark, he can defeat monsters of this speed or slower. Now that he has checked what he needed to, he discusses the next plan, which is simply to ignore all the weaklings. He'll head straight for the area boss, and that's it. Imul doesn't think it's a good plan, but since they are both speedsters, they'll get to the area boss quickly and reach Thirdrima. He checks the map and sees that the area boss should be where they are, but all he can see is a swamp. He now understands what Imul was trying to tell him earlier. He was in a hurry to leave the city and didn't ask about the area boss. She informs him that the monster's name is the Mud Digger. It emerges from the ground to attack, so it's crucial to find a way to trap in one place. Sunraku is now in a bit of trouble as he's going to have to fight in a swamp, and he might not do well. Imul realizes the monster is approaching and warns Sunraku. As the monster emerges from the swamp, Sunraku tells Imul to climb on his shoulder. In Shangri-La Frontier, the swamp forces everyone to walk. One leg is always stuck until the other foot reaches the bottom. This situation is the worst for Sunraku. The area boss, the Mud Digger, is then revealed, and it's a gigantic slug-like creature. The game recommends having at least 4 people in a group to fight this boss. Sunraku counts as 2, but he's not so sure about his chances. The battle begins with both of them observing each other. Rakuro wonders how he's going to fight with this swamp limiting his speed. The swamp boss takes a surprisingly high leap given its enormous size, and Rakuro wonders how it can dive into such shallow mud. Yep, that's how games go. The monster approaches Rakuro and he uses a sliding move to dodge the attack. The battle experience with Lake Cannon has improved several skills, so discovering the best way to use them will be the key to winning this battle. The monster tries to bite Rakuro, but he manages to stop it with his daggers and then counterattacks. The little bunny is impressed, but Rakuro says the real challenge begins now. In a few seconds of battle, he has already used the abilities that seemed most useful to avoid damage, both the counterattack and the sliding move. The cooldown time for each ability is 10 seconds, during which he cannot avoid damage. When the giant slug approaches him again, the bunny uses a skill called Magic Blade, which hits the monster in the face and knocks it into the swamp. Rakuro is impressed and he realizes that he forgot he has a partner. It seems a bit strange for a real player to rely on a real NPC, but now that he has a chance, he shouldn't waste it. He decides to reduce the distance while the monster is down using the acceleration ability, which provides a temporary bonus to attack and agility. Nonetheless, the approach is slow and Rakuro is getting frustrated. The giant slug gets up and attacks again, while Rakuro launches an attack called Spiral Blade. This immobilizes the monster for a while, allowing him to get close and use the Blade Climb, which is used for climbing tall walls, but in this case, he uses it on the monster. When he reaches the top of the slug, he suggests to Imul for an explosion, and the bunny agrees. Meanwhile, Rakuro tries to balance himself on the monster's nose while it attempts to eat him. When it's about to happen, Rakuro says it's too late as 10 seconds have passed. He uses the counterattack again, and then the bunny uses the Magic Blade enhanced by addition. With this, the giant slug is eliminated and falls back into the swamp. Rakuro and Imul also fall into the swamp, and the bunny gets upset because his clothes got dirty. Rakuro wonders where the giant slug has gone, and that's when the trembling begins. He feels like something is sucking his feet and he can't move. Quickly, Rakuro grabs Imul and throws him away to save his friend. The monster attacks him from below and throws him into the air. Rakuro thought it would be an instant death, but he barely takes any damage. It's then explained that the Mud Digger is a quadruped monster like a mole with a shark's head and catfish whiskers. Its most notable feature is a special attack activated when its HP reaches a certain point. It dives deep into the ground, causing the swamp to vibrate and immobilizing players in place. Then it randomly throws someone into the air with its nose. If a player challenges it alone, they'll be constantly hit while in the swamp and lose all their HP due to the fall damage. That's why it's also known as the Soil Killer. Rakuro imagines that whoever designed this boss surely has a complicated personality. He wonders what to do, considering magic items, but he quickly realizes it won't work. He's in big trouble, and he's never been able to get used to deaths by falling in virtual reality games. As he's about to fall, Imul runs towards him and tells him to show his Vorpal spirit. In that moment, Imul manages to reach him just as he's about to hit the ground, and he uses a magical scroll to teleport them. Rakuro is teleported above the giant slug's head, and in this world of Shangri-La, there's an attack skill called the Meteor Drop, which uses the energy of the fall. Sunraku had accumulated a lot of energy during his fall, and when Imul teleported him above the Mud Digger, he had that energy. So what would typically be a fall that results in a player's elimination is recklessly rebranded as a risky attack. In other words, it's not a Meteor Drop, it's a Meteor Drop by mistake. Finally, with this attack, the swamp monster is defeated. Rakuro loses a significant amount of HP due to hitting his head during the attack, but he's lucky to have 1 HP left, and with this victory, he reaches level 29. Emil congratulates him on the job, and Rakuro is still processing everything that happened, as so much happened in such a short time, and he's having trouble organizing his thoughts. He celebrates with Emil and praises the bunny, who tells him to stop imitating what he says. Like with Leikin, Rakuro had difficulties in this battle, with the difference that this time he survived and won. After some time following that battle while they're walking, Rakuro consumes some herbs to restore his HP. However, even the herbs don't bring his HP back to the maximum immediately. Emil is surprised that Rakuro shoved the herbs down his throat, but Sunraku says it's the only way to get them into his mouth, given that he has a woodpecker's beak. Sunraku thinks about how Emil has incredible strength, and in reality, he ended up being carried on Emil's back. He hopes that Emil will work hard and put in the effort to become as strong as a Vorpal rabbit. Emil says that they'll soon reach Thirdrima and asks if, after they arrive, Sunraku will stay in rabbits the whole time. Sunraku confirms this and then brings up another question about how to hide Emil when they reach the city. Drawing too much attention, as they did the last time, could make them vulnerable to attacks. Emil says that in that case, he'll use the mysterious rabbit bracelet, the treasure of Vorpal rabbits. He asks Sunraku to keep it with him and then shouts the word metamorphosis. He transforms into a little girl, ensuring that he leaves Sunraku surprised. This will allow them to enter the city without being noticed. Sunraku finds it all very strange, as he thought he was playing the best Japanese game in the world, but now he thinks Shangri-La is some kind of harem game with a rabbit girl. He figures he's taken quite a trip. At this point, Emil cancels the transformation and mentions that it's quite exhausting and that he'll transform again once they arrive in the city. 4 or 5 minutes is the limit in his current state. Sunraku understands and thinks that when they're in the city, Emil will have to revert to his normal form when they're in private. However, he points out that Emil made a mistake, a fatal Vorpal misunderstanding. He says that the moment he started walking around with the half-naked birdman, he made himself even stranger. Sunraku thinks that, in the end, Emil will have to play the role of the desperate girl walking with a half-naked birdman. They finally arrive in Thirdrima, and Emil comments on how big and lovely the place is just as he remembered it. Sunraku doesn't seem very impressed. He says he's not like a destiny-guided warrior and has seen many places. He tells Emil to move on and prepare to transform to avoid suspicion. In Thirdrima, the guards are surprised and ask why Sunraku is half-naked. They think he's caught some criminal. Sunraku confirms that he already knew that he's a stranger, and the guards also notice the frightening marks on his body. Emil, in the form of a girl, tells the guards that this man has a past that brings sadness just by hearing about it. She begins to lie to the guards, saying that guided by his own destiny, Sunraku was reborn as a super warrior and challenged his rival from a past life, none other than Leikin. But by the smallest difference, by a hair's breadth, by the slightest caprice of fate, he was cursed. Sunraku wonders where she got all this story, but Emil continues with the lie, stating that, unable to escape destiny, Sunraku was forced to go with the flow of fate. A lonely warrior wandering on a journey to remove the curse that's been plaguing him. That's Lord Sunraku. She keeps spinning the lies until the guards finally understand. It's rare to see a half-naked pioneer, but it's not unheard of. They allow them to pass. At this moment, Sunraku notices 2 guys in the corner, and he wonders it's just his imagination, as he usually stands out. Emil calls him to move on, and suddenly, a girl grabs Sunraku's hand, claiming to know him. He's completely puzzled and asks her who she is. We're then taken back a few hours to when Sunraku had encountered 2 girls in Secondale who started asking a lot of questions, and he ended up fleeing from them. One of them managed to take a screenshot of Sunraku with Emil and posted it on forums, asking how to form an alliance with a talking rabbit like Sunraku did. Thanks to this, many players learned about Sunraku's existence and started asking how and when monsters could talk. This screenshot reached the girl who confronted Sunraku a few hours later. When she saw the post, she was hurt since she believed that you could only have dogs and cats as partners. She wondered if it was cheating, but she knew the game didn't tolerate any cheating. Various players who saw the screenshot wondered about the tattoos and mentioned that they didn't recall seeing a full-body design like that in the character creator. Then a player commented on the post, saying that the tattoos were a curse, a sign that you've been recognized by Leikin, the Emperor of the Night. Leikin is a random encounter, so it's not uncommon to hear about newcomers encountering him. But the players wondered how Sunraku ended up with a curse, and one player named Orsalot commented that they could eliminate Sunraku until he spilled the beans about everything. Orsalot is from the Ashura Kai clan, a clan that eliminates characters. At this point, the scene shifts to a red-haired woman who comments that if Mr. Sunraku is seeing this, he should talk to a player with a wolf emblem and a sword, apologizing for all the information about him that leaked, they can protect him. The woman is very interested in the Lycan's mark. Thanks to this screenshot, Sunraku has become a focal point, treated like a special event boss, and he has no idea about any of this. Now we return to the girl who challenged Sunraku. She asked how to tame a Vorpal rabbit, and Sunraku can't play dumb. She knows he was with a talking Vorpal rabbit. Sunraku wonders how she found out and what he should do now. He definitely won't reveal any information about the unique scenario, and he doesn't even know how to activate it. Sunraku responds that he doesn't know about that, and at that moment, another girl appears and tells him it's not cool to keep information to himself. Everyone should share the fun. Sunraku recognizes the player and immediately draws his daggers, calling her the Pencil Warrior. She corrects him, saying that in Shangri-La, she's known as Arthur Pencilgun. She's a level 99 player with a red skull next to her name, indicating she's a player killer. It turns out that Arthur Pencilgun, the Warrior of the Pencil, is friends with Sunraku and other bad games. To talk about her, we need to discuss a certain lousy game known as Unite Rounds. In this game, there's a shop where two looters are taking a bunch of stuff, and at the exit, they decide to split up. But at that moment, the player Sunraku appears, praising them for their work in obtaining the items but stating that he's going to take everything. Players claim that this is a post-apocalyptic looting game. Originally, it simulated a kingdom on the brink of collapse, with players taking on the roles of knights protecting people from attacking monsters in a cooperative MMO. Due to the overly complicated and poorly designed system, item drop rates were abysmally low, leading to a shortage of serious players. Even the beginner quest, gathering medicinal herbs, required 12 hours of searching the open fields to complete. And of course, finding higher grade items was even more challenging. So what did the players decide to do? The answer is simple: steal what they needed. Instead of spending hours on a quest, players thought they should just attack an NPC shop or steal from players who had already done so. In this, Unite Rounds hit the mark. In a world filled with atrocities and where everyone was an enemy, a single figure consumed by violence and knowing every trick in the book took control of the kingdom, the Pencil Warrior. Now in charge, she declares that they will share all the wealth and items. The players celebrate, and thus the Pencil Kingdom was born. On that very day after nightfall at dawn, we see all those players who were celebrating a few hours earlier now lying defeated and looted on the ground. It's at this moment that Sunraku and his colleague Katsuo enter the castle, and Sunraku takes the opportunity to grab some things for himself as well. Katsuo asks Sunraku if the game isn't about defending the kingdom from monsters. Sunraku responds that he thought it was about defeating the true evil queen, the Pencil Warrior. She was nothing like the final boss in the game's story. She intentionally abused players who didn't follow her and then used her agents to create an organized resistance to oppose her. In other words, she fueled the victims' desire to fight back, preventing them from simply giving up on the game. This time, Unite Rounds was completely catering to the whims of a single player, and she acted under the name she had chosen, Dystopia Empress. She is surprised and comments that Sunraku used the rebel army as a distraction for a small attack in her private quarters. She thinks it was a clever move. Sunraku remarks that she could have used more efficient traps. It was so easy that they got through on the first try. Sunraku and Tataki Katsuo, she says she will remember those names. Dystopia Empress says that there's something about Sunraku's silly grin that annoys her, so she says it's time for the battle against the boss and asks if they can defeat her and become the Revolutionary Knights. After this scene in Unite Rounds, we return to Shangri-La where the two meet. They have a history together in another game. In Unite Rounds, they fought until it ended in a draw, with both of them dying in the end. But here in Shangri-La, they have a significant level difference. The one initiates the attack and says that she assumed the penalty and came to Fictitia just to eliminate Sunraku. She then launches an attack with 3 knives, but Sunraku manages to dodge 2 of them and defends against the other with his daggers. He suspects that these knives have a poison attribute. Pencil then asks Sunraku what level he is, knowing that he recently defeated the Mud Digger and assuming he must be around level 30. She mentions his remarkable dodging ability because it's a divine game, and to him, all of his movements are smooth. The girl who challenged Sunraku before Pencilgun arrived recognizes Pencilgun with surprise. She says that Pencilgun is the second in command of the Ashura Kai, a player-killing clan that eliminates other players. She wonders if Pencilgun is the infamous giant killing. Sunraku doesn't know the term and asks what it means. Pencilgun explains that it focuses on ambushing high-level players, which is why she earned the nickname Giant Killing. After these acts of hers, the developers made some adjustments to the game, making it much more challenging to ambush players. Sunraku takes the opportunity to make a joke, recalling that in Unite Rounds and that Dystopia, he was the giant who ended up dead. He tells her not to confuse her size with the weight of her crimes. She laughs, saying that for a bird brain, he uses some complicated words. While attacking him, she tells him not to bring up that subject in this game. Sunraku counters her attack, asserting that he has a bird's head but not a bird's brain. Pencil then explains that she didn't come just for personal reasons. The leader of her clan, Ashura Kai, asked her to deliver a message. The message is that Sunraku must publish information about the unique scenario or walk around with a target on his back until he does. Sunraku realizes he's being threatened and thinks that this clan leader is an idiot. He runs toward the city gate, using some evasive abilities. Nevertheless, he wonders what to do as there's a significant difference in equipment and levels between them. Sunraku cleverly notices that Pencilvin is putting in a lot of effort to prevent him from getting closer to the gate. He assumes she adjusted the timing of the first attack to keep him from entering the city as well. It's indeed quite inconvenient for a player killer to operate in a densely populated city. Pencil then prepares for her next attack, and meanwhile, Emil, transformed into a girl, starts to appear. He's approaching the time limit of the transformation. The girl who challenged Sunraku before Pencildan arrived laments the fact that Sunraku is fighting Pencildan now because she couldn't get the information she wanted. At that moment, she notices Emil and goes to ask him a question. But right then, the transformation is undone, and the girl is left utterly baffled until she finally sees Emil in his original form at the worst possible time for Sunraku. The girl is enchanted with Emil in her hands, and he asks her to calm down. Sunraku was watching this, and Pencildan asks him if he's really underestimating her. That's when he gets the idea to use a counterattack and tells her that she's underestimating him. After giving her a kick, he orders Emil to come to him, and the rabbit obeys, immediately hopping onto his shoulder. Sunraku runs toward the city's entrance, and the crazy girl asks if she can at least take a picture. Sunraku says he'll allow it if they survive, but Pencildan asserts that he's not fast enough to escape her. Suddenly, an explosion occurs, and the crazy girl appears in front of Pencildan, saying that she doesn't care about Sunraku, but that if Pencildan puts that cute rabbit in danger, she'll eliminate her on the spot. Sunraku was pleased with this situation. He's made the girl named Animalia take him out of danger. He tells Emil that she really liked him. Now all they need to do is enter the city and use the teleportation portal to rabbits. It's unlikely anyone will discover Sunraku, but at this moment he stops everything and the scene shifts to Pencildan, who says that she's just the messenger. However, she didn't come alone. She then shows 4 other player kill clan members, all beneath her in terms of level and equipment. Pencildan is happy that now she can fight the zoo director, who leads the Sval Zoo clan, a group that documents monsters without interest in other players. Meanwhile, Sunraku is dealing with the 4 player killers, battling them head-on and saying they only surpass him in terms of level, equipment, and status. Animalia casts a super powerful and potent curse on Pencildan, but she absorbs the attack and reflects it back at the animal girl. Animalia has high status, particularly HP, but she uses many debuffs to help record monster videos. Animalia asks how Pencildan managed to reflect all her curses. Pencil explains that there was a PK shaman who wouldn't leave her alone, so she knows how complicated curses can be. That's why she carries a punishment straw doll that reflects all curses back to their caster. This time, Animalia had no luck. We return to Sunraku's fight, and he's thinking about his best target being the guy who thinks he's weak. With a slow weapon like a longsword, he doesn't even need to use skills to dodge those attacks. The problem is how to deal damage to higher-level players with stronger armor. Just then, a surprise occurs. Ria shows up in her armor, delivering a destructive blow to one of the player killers and eliminating him with just that one strike. The other 3 are shocked and wonder if that's the most powerful skill, the attack holder. Sunraku wonders what this attack holder is, and Ria looks at him, confirming the bird-headed Sunraku and the nickname. She finally managed to find Hizutome, and this moment takes us back a bit in time outside of virtual reality to Ria's home, where she's wondering where Hizutome is. She can't find him. She starts to think that the games he likes are quite unusual and challenging, and she's never been able to find a game they could play together. But Shangri-La is different. She knows how to play this game, and she won't let this chance slip away. She enters the game from a Secondale Inn and reads a message from her sister. Her sister asks Siger Zero, Ria's game nickname, to look for a specific player who was last seen near Secondale. He has a Vorpal rabbit wearing clothes and talks to him, probably on his way to Third Dreama. The message includes a picture of the player equipped with a birdwatcher mask, legs, and torso marked with Lycan. The player's name is Sunraku. Ria begins her search using a very fast-running skill. Several clans are trying to contact Sunraku, including the Ashura Kai. At this moment, Sunraku is likely already in battle, so Ria needs to be cautious. She spots Sunraku and thinks that if she saves him from the player killers, she'll have an opening to talk to him, maybe one day even in real life. She launches that powerful cutting attack we saw earlier, which wiped out one of the player killers. Pencil then says that things have become interesting, and maybe those player killers won't be able to defeat Sunraku. Battling him in Shangri-La has made one thing even clearer. The skills he acquired from various bad games of all genres are more valuable than unique items and higher-level status. That's a powerful weapon in Shangri-La Frontier. Pencilbin heard that Katsuo is also playing Shangri-La now, so with him joining Sunraku, that project is becoming more realistic. When the dust settles and Pencilbin sees Saiger Zero, she's entranced because first, Sunraku attracted the zoo director, and now the attack holder. She's thrilled that she found Sunraku in the game, but then Animalia says she hit her with 5 spells. The punishment straw doll is extremely potent, with each doll being able to absorb up to 5 debuffs. Animalia asks if Pencilbin can now counter her final attack. Suddenly, we go back in time a bit, where Hizutome is casually chatting with a friend saying he's playing a game full of bugs with only automatic saves. His friend responds that he doesn't understand why, but the game seems fun. Hizutome admits the game is actually bad, and the friend adds that game-breaking bugs are the worst kind of garbage, asking why Hizutome is playing a bad game. Comically, Hizutome replies saying he plays because it's fun. During this scene, Rie is behind the guys, observing and thinks to herself that Hizutome always seemed to be smiling but was distracted and bumped his head on a pole. The anime shifts to the school where the two study, and another guy talks to Hizutome, asking if the edition he's reading is the latest and if he's looking for new bad games. In the background, Rie still observes him, thinking about how he seems to be enjoying himself. Even during his martial arts class, Rie continues to think about Hizutome and decides to go after him. She arrives at a game store where she sees the boy choosing a game. The store attendant appears behind Rie and catches her attention, making her feel embarrassed. Back at school, another friend strikes up a conversation with Hizutome, and Rie thinks she tried to talk to him many times, hoping she could eventually talk to him, even if it was in a game. PvP returns to the scene, and Sunraku is surrounded by various enemies, only concerned with dodging their attacks. The huge enemy in heavy armor tries to execute a destructive cut on him, but he escapes again. Emil is amazed by the opponent's power. Soon, they can see the name of this formidable opponent, Saiger Zero. Sunraku says she doesn't seem like a player killer, abbreviated as PK, but he bets she's after that unique scenario like the others. He looks around at the number of enemies and says he won't be able to escape this and needs to find a way out. Animalia recovers and casts a sacrifice spell on Pencilbin, draining all her and her opponent's HP. She says the straw doll has been consumed and Pencilbin can't reflect the curse. Animalia completes the spell and both of them die together. A huge explosion occurs and Sunraku asks Emil to open the portal. Sunraku uses Saiger Zero's sword as a boost and jumps, trying to escape. While jumping over Saiger Zero, he apologizes to her. One of his opponents tells the others not to let him reach the city because it's full of bounty hunters. But Saiger Zero quickly strikes the 3 opponents who were planning to pursue Sunraku, killing them all. While fleeing, Sunraku says he'll at least remember the name of this opponent, Saiger Zero. One of the remaining players says that Saiger Zero is causing trouble and shouldn't underestimate Ashura Kai, but Saiger Zero doesn't care about what he said. She's just happy that Sunraku spoke to her, even if it was just an apology. The remaining players find her distracted behavior strange and see an opportunity to attack her because her guard is down. One of them attacks and says that killing her will level him up in Ashura Kai. Saiger Zero destroys the enemy with just 1 blow, cutting him in half. She says that if it weren't for them, Sunraku could have talked to her more. The rest of the enemies try to flee, but Saiger Zero wants to vent her anger on them, so she kills the 2 remaining ones. Sunraku and Emil enter the portal and celebrate their escape. Sunraku says his pursuers can't follow him to rabbits. For a moment, he feels relieved to have escaped, mentioning that the battle was scary and recalling that he didn't have enough mana during the fight. Emil says she used all her mana in her transformation. Sunraku says they would have had big problems if they couldn't leave Third Rima. Emil compliments the taste of the mana item she's drinking, and Sunraku is glad he bought some. He concludes that at least the objective was achieved. Pencilbin sends an email to Sunraku apologizing for her defeat. In the email, she says, "My death was my fault alone. I don't consider it a loss to you. I can't believe Attack Holder helped you." Sunraku wonders who Attack Holder is and realizes it's Saiger Zero. Pencilbin continues the email. "Anyway, I really want to talk to you. I'll invite Katsuo for a meeting in the Unite rounds. Let's talk about scheduling later." Sunraku is confused and says she doesn't want to talk in SLF, finding it strange. He receives another email, this time from Katsuo, who says he was also invited by Pencilbin for a meeting. Katsuo is curious to know what Pencilbin has to say and asks Sunraku to go too. Sunraku replies that he can't back down now that Katsuo has put pressure on him, but that he has more important things to do right now. Imul says again that the mana potion tastes good, and Sunraku apologizes for the delay, saying they will start this unique scenario for real. Imul responds, finally, jumping for joy. Sunraku asks Imul what they should do now and remembers that Vash, Imul's boss rabbit, said he would train him. The rabbit said he would take Sunraku to the battle arena where they do most of the training. This arena is called the Vorpal Coliseum, and Sunraku is impressed with its size. Imul says that her boss wants Sunraku to fight against 10 monsters in the arena using only Vorpal weapons. Sunraku gets excited, saying it's a chance to level up before wiping the smile off Pinsilvan's face. Sunraku draws his weapons and gets ready. Imul opens the arena gate. As the gate opens, Sunraku thinks he doesn't expect to win 10 fights right away and that he should use trial and error, learning the attack patterns of the enemies to defeat them. Before he finishes the thought, the gate opens completely and the first opponents emerge, the pack dogs. The arena's voice explains that these dogs always appear in groups of 5 or more, and their average level is 65. Sunraku says they look strong. He becomes desperate and complains to Imul, asking if she's really going to make him fight several level 65 enemies. Imul replies yes, and that it was only the first monster. Sunraku sarcastically tells Imul to at least be honest because it was the first fight, not the first monster. The dogs jump on Sunraku and easily defeat him. Back in the real world, Ria is moved because Hizutom talked to her. The memory of him jumping over her head comes to her mind, and she thinks about gathering the courage to send a friend request. While wondering if he would accept, she imagines him accepting her friend request with excitement, thanking her for saving him in the last PvP, and saying that now they will go to school together every day. Ria is excited by her own imagination, but suddenly becomes worried because she couldn't find him in Third Rima, wondering if he logged out. She concludes her thought by wondering what Hizutom is doing now. Meanwhile, Sunraku is on his 7th attempt against the pack dogs, and Imul tries to motivate him. The dogs attack Sunraku again, and he thinks fortunately there's no penalty for dying in the arena, but the problem isn't the number or level of enemies, but that they attack in sync. To protect himself, Sunraku uses the repellent counter-attack skill, thinking that this coordination is the result of a commander giving orders. He dodges a new attack using the sliding movement and takes a distant position to think. He realizes one of the dogs always stays at a safe distance and never attacks, only howling. Realizing that this dog is the commander, Sunraku attacks using the spiral blade, injuring the dog, which runs away, but soon the other dogs run to protect it. Since the commanding dog was injured, the pack lost the synchronization of attacks, becoming an easy target for Sunraku. He protects himself from attacks and goes after the commanding dog to prevent it from giving orders, landing critical hits on it while the dog tries to escape. After several critical hits, the dog's HP runs out and it dies. Imul gets excited and praises Sunraku. He goes after the remaining dogs and realizes they don't stand a chance without their leader. One by one, he defeats the dogs, winning the fight and completing the first challenge. Imul praises Sunraku again, who responds, hoping that this time there won't be several enemies at once. Imul replies that this time it's only one, and the gate opens again. From there emerges his second challenge, the Parasite Tentacle. It's a massive monster with a bear's body and 8 snake heads, which frustrates Sunraku once again because he considered it to be several enemies at once. Quickly, Sunraku realizes from the creature's name that the true monster was the tentacles, not the bear. As soon as he cut off all the heads, the bear stops moving and he emerges victorious. The next level presents a goblin berserker. Sunraku mocks, saying that even though the arena called the goblin super strong, it was just a figure of speech because it was still just a goblin. He concludes that the goblin was easier than the dogs and the tentacles. At level 4, he faces the Dino Javelin, a boar with the ability to explode when attacking and incredible resistance. Sunraku times it and realizes the boar runs for 20 seconds each time before getting tired. He climbs onto the boar and masters it, drawing on his experience with mechanical bulls and other games. For the 5th opponent, the arena throws the Toxic Eagle, attacking only from above. Sunraku dies to the eagle over 100 times. At the creature of level 6, Sunraku faces an armor larva but claims it's weak compared to the bird that flew in the heights and dropped poison bombs. At level 7, he encounters a fast and strong panther but not resistant. He learns that the panther's strategy is to get behind you and attack from outside your line of sight, and he manages to defeat it. In level 8, there's a 2-headed tiger. According to Sunraku, nothing special, just a normal strong monster. At level 9, he confronts a giant metal golem. Sunraku starts explaining in a complicated way how he defeated the enemy, using difficult terms like point A and point B, but soon gives up on sounding intellectual, stating that it's boring and admits that he just dodged, removed the golem's armor, attacked, and won. Excited and confident, Sunraku cheers, claiming there's only one level left. After defeating the last opponent, he levels up to 31 and complains, saying he only went up 2 levels. He ironically thanks the Vorpal Soul Collar, as it cuts his earned XP in half. Tired and stumbling, Imul asks Sunraku to rest for the next battle, but Sunraku insists and decides to continue fighting. Out of nowhere, Vash appears and asks if Sunraku managed to defeat the 9th enemy, saying it was perfect timing. Sunraku and Imul are surprised by the arrival of the rabbit boss. Sunraku wonders why he won at the right moment and thinks that defeating the 9th monster activated the poison. Vash says he thought of making the 10th challenge a monster he captured himself, but had to go a bit further. He throws a huge cloak with a creature inside. The cloak is closed by chains and some seals. Vash snaps his fingers, and the seals open, dropping the chains and revealing the monster. Sunraku wonders if it's a human or a wizard. Vash explains that a long time ago, an idiot tried to merge with a tree to gain more life, and he doubts that Sunraku can defeat the monster the way it is now, so he chooses a different victory criterion. Sunraku asks what it is, and Vash replies, "Survive for 5 minutes." The arena's voice announces that the monster of the 10th challenge is called the Convicted Wood Mage, and the victory condition has been updated. A countdown appears. Sunraku concludes it's a battle of endurance, and as he starts to say it's just a matter of running away, the monster attacks and nearly hits him. Sunraku asks if there was any attack movement because he didn't even see where the blow came from. The Wood Mage attacks several times, and Sunraku manages to dodge everything, but with difficulty. Vash states he's a fan of Sunraku's confidence but wishes he showed more courage. Sunraku replies that he understands and that maybe these 5 minutes will be quite long, making Vash smile. The narrator informs that out of more than 30 million SLF players, Sunraku is the first to fight this monster, but it will take a while for people to know. The monster's plaque appears again, revealing that the Wood Mage is level 120. The Wood Mage attacks Sunraku numerous times, forcing him to dodge each blow with great difficulty. After dodging several times, he makes a swift attack under the enemy's wooden tentacles, managing to hit his body with the sword. Sunraku's hit seems to have no effect on the mage, and he wonders what this opponent is made of as he didn't seem affected by the attack. The Wood Mage throws his chains at Sunraku, who moves away and begins to dodge the opponent's attacks again. Sunraku wonders if physical attacks work against the mage while continuously evading the attacks. Imul blows a trumpet to signal that a minute has passed, leaving 4 in total. Vash encourages Sunraku in his fight, asking him to show his Vorpal Soul. Impressed by the opponent, Sunraku continues to dodge his attacks while trying to formulate a strategy in his head. He realizes that the mage uses root spears almost without moving and chains that seem to affect his status if they touch him. The two abilities of the mage pursue Sunraku as if it were their natural right to catch him, and he knows he must dodge the attacks at all costs. For a moment, Sunraku manages to free himself from the mage's tentacles and approaches him, but the wooden monster uses his staff for the first time, invoking an unknown magic apparently made of electricity, making Sunraku recoil again. Before Sunraku could reflect on the enemy's new ability, he uses his staff again and releases fireballs at the protagonist, causing a huge explosion where he was. With great effort, Sunraku makes a huge leap and escapes the explosion. He notices that the more time passes, the more the opponent changes the type of attack, and he sees that the fight is programmed to increase in difficulty as time passes. He continues to dodge the relentless attacks of the Wood Mage. The roots and chains increase in quantity, and the spells cover an ever larger area. Suffocated, Sunraku realizes that if he allows the opponent's strength to increase over time, it will be his end before the 4 minutes remaining in the fight. The mage uses the staff for a new magic, and Sunraku thinks he would have a better chance against Leican. Now the Wood Mage throws ice stones at Sunraku, who has increasingly more difficulty dodging all the attacks he suffers. Sunraku begins to think that he has no chance, that he is very tired and cannot create a fighting strategy because he is spending all his energy just dodging the opponent's spells. Exhausted, he considers taking some glucose and trying again, knowing that there is no punishment if he dies. But soon he scolds himself for having a loser mentality, wondering when he became so weak. Even so, fatigue and the strength of the enemy make him question himself, remembering how many times he died to the pack dogs in the first challenge. Moreover, he remembered how Imul had to save him against the Mud Digger because he gave up in the middle of the fight. But while dodging a new attack, he forces himself to return to the fight, stating that before he realizes it, he will find a shortcut to reach the enemy. Using the swords as momentum, he climbs one of the Wood Mage's roots and begins to think that these horrible games he plays have turned his brain into garbage. He says that an overdose of bad games is not good, and that he needs to balance it with a divine game. He advances along the mage's route, dodging and deflecting his attacks. Sunraku knows it makes no sense to give up on an event he cannot lose or take shortcuts in a game that has not been completely released. He jumps and attacks the mage again. Vash praises Sunraku, who went through all waves of magic to achieve a new physical attack but knows it is futile because Sunraku can only use basic attacks. Sunraku is tired and needs to win the fight in one go, so he has an idea. Instead of using the swords, he kicks the wood mage's staff, making the magical weapon fall from the enemy's hands. Sunraku observes that even if the mage blocks physical damage, the kick works. The mage tries to retrieve his staff by throwing chains in its direction, but Sunraku throws a sword at the chain and prevents it. He mocks the enemy, saying that it is a very nice staff for a monster to have, and that in a post-apocalyptic world, survival means plundering. The wood mage becomes furious and attacks Sunraku with even more intensity, using only the spells he can cast without the staff. Sunraku remembers the looting skills he learned in the Unite rounds and manages to grab the staff before it falls to the ground. Vash praises Sunraku's skill but warns that there are still 2 minutes left, saying that he will face many difficulties, and now is the time to show what he can do. The lack of the staff made the mage lose control and attack even more, and Sunraku continues to struggle, dodging ever larger spells. Emil motivates his friend, warning that there is only 1 minute left in the fight. The rabbit advises Sunraku to spend this time just avoiding the attacks. Sunraku knows his skill is for that, and he promises not to die after getting so close. With only 47 seconds left, a gigantic magical barrier rises in front of Sunraku, preventing him from continuing to evade. The mage manages to grab him with his chains, affecting Sunraku's status, causing drainage and exhaustion surpassing Lycan's mark. The wood mage shouts at Sunraku to return the staff and attacks him, but he throws the staff away. Desperate, the mage jumps toward the staff and with some effort manages to recover his magical weapon. With so much power back in his hands, he points the staff at Sunraku, but the protagonist is quite calm. Ironic, he calls the enemy an idiot and reminds him that time is running out, and if the mage had continued draining him with the chains, he would have won. Time runs out, and Sunraku says the mage is as stubborn as wood. Even after the time is up, the wood mage throws several fireballs at Sunraku, who runs desperately and asks Vash what is happening as the fight time has already ended. Vash interrupts the fight by grabbing the monster by the collar and throwing him forcefully to the ground, saying that the idea of the 5 minutes was his, not the monster's. It was a close call, but Vash gives the victory to Sunraku. The Rabbit Master casts a spell that disperses the wood mage, leaving Sunraku amazed at how easily the master got rid of such a powerful creature with such a simple move. Vash states that Sunraku certainly demonstrated his Vorpal soul, but Sunraku is confused since the mage absorbed all physical attacks. While Emil celebrates his companion's victory, Vash explains that the enemy can only absorb physical damage while holding the staff, and Sunraku realizes that this is why the mage insisted on having this equipment. Vash announces the mission prize, indicating Sunraku as an honorary citizen of Rabbits. Emil jumps for joy at the achievement, but Sunraku doesn't seem very happy with the reward. He says the prize is nice, but asks if Vash has any rare items or something like that. Vash remembers this detail and snaps his fingers, removing the Vorpal Soul collar from Sunraku, saying that he counts on the protagonist from now on. A unique scenario opens on the screen, indicating that the invitation from Rabbits has been completed. Vash leaves, and Sunraku can't believe he no longer needs to use the XP limiting collar. An extra unique scenario opens called the Epic Scenario of the Vorpal Rabbit, with the option to start now, but Sunraku's only reaction is extreme irritation since the mission he just won didn't yield any items for him. Back in reality, Hizutone logs out of the game and realizes it's almost 3 a.m. and decides to sleep. The next day, Sunraku analyzes the mission of the Epic Scenario of the Vorpal Rabbit, but realizes that the recommended level is 80. He remembers seeing this mission once in a walkthrough but gave up because the plot was too extensive. Discouraged by the difficulty of the unique scenario, he decides to skip this mission for now and go to the next city. However, he needs to move without being noticed by PKs or information hunters, and even if he uses another headgear, the Lycan marks on his body are too conspicuous. He gets irritated with Lycan for not being able to use armor on his torso and legs, but Emil calms his friend, giving him a good idea. Emil takes Sunraku to an exclusive shop in the Rabbit's Palace. It's a shop owned by Emil's younger brother, Pete's. Emil explains that his younger brother buys items and resells them in Rabbits. Pete's adds that he can also be found in other cities, but he rarely leaves Rabbits because he has to transform into a human to do so. When telling his situation, he calls Sunraku Mr. Bird, the Night Emperor's darling. Sunraku explains that he is not a bird and is just wearing a mask. Then he removes the mask, and Emil is completely surprised, thinking that Sunraku had a reason not to remove the mask, but he responds that of course he can remove it. Emil asks his brother if he has any special fabric to sell, and the youngest brother takes out a fabric he said he had difficulty finding a buyer for because it seemed too simple to have such a high price. In the next scene, Sunraku buys a map of the area around Thirdrima, wearing a ridiculous fabric, and the attendant holds back laughter. After the purchase already in the middle of the street, Sunraku can't stand it and complains to Emil, who is in his human form. Sunraku shouts that he understands that the fabric covers the lichen marks, but that it didn't have to be so ridiculous. Emil tries to calm Sunraku because the shouting could attract people's attention, and Sunraku grumbles that this outfit was already drawing everyone's attention. Emil asks Sunraku to endure just until they leave the city, and the friend understands and calms down. The two continue their journey, and Sunraku says he has the map and the recovery items he needed, but Emil spends too much MP in his human form. While he spoke, Emil was drinking an item as if it were a Coke in the desert, and Sunraku comments that he needs to reach the next region soon before he runs out of items. They open the map and choose a path to follow from 3 options. The prismatic forest cave on the way to Forfolkshire, a labyrinth of caves where flowers of all colors bloom. The caldera lake of the fall of civilization, a crater of an ancient volcano where water accumulated until it became a lake. The iron ruins of the divine on the way to Sixenveld. These ruins got their name from the various iron plates they had. Sunraku gets excited to choose which path to take, giving a speech about this being a war game where you decide which group to play with, which to explore, and which to suck up to, and that this was an extremely complex decision. Emil interrupts and recommends the Caldera Lake, but Sunraku gets irritated for losing his romantic reasoning. Excited, he announces that they should go through the prismatic forest cave first and asks Emil if he wants to understand the reasoning behind this decision. Emil continues to drink the item and completely ignores his companion. As if he had been answered, Sunraku continues his even more animated thoughts, declaring that first, the area they had to avoid at all costs is clearly the iron ruin of the divines, as the place may attract someone with the promise of scientific prizes, but it is a trap. He embellishes his speech even more, saying that science means civilization, the wisdom of centuries. While Sunraku is distracted giving his speech, Emil sees someone familiar approaching and warns his companion. Next, the two realize that Siger Zero was observing all their movements. In the course of the night, an unknown coastline presents the wreckage of a ship accompanied by another boat next to it, stranded on the shore, leading to a meeting. Inside, Orsalot, the leader of the Ashura Kai clan, is introduced, complaining that his other members have tarnished the institution's name. Some of them justify themselves, saying they didn't expect the attack holder to appear in the middle of the battle where they were defeated. Orsalot responds that it was a unique scenario, where they should expect the best players to join the group and help in the fight. Pencil then asks if, since the scenario was so complicated, why Orsalot himself didn't appear to help, but he claims he doesn't have time for such things, causing the woman to shrug. Analyzing the enemies, he comments that the rabbit, Emil, is something unique, and they are dealing with a newcomer who doesn't know the system. Therefore, the clan should threaten this rival and make him speak at all costs. Pencil then replies that she has no problem with pet rabbits, but questions whether, as members of the Ashura Kai, they shouldn't deal with that first. Silence fills the room, and the clan members look at each other undecided until Orsalot retorts that unique monsters were not made to be defeated, and at the moment, they are the only ones who know the conditions for that thing to appear. The encounter alone already guaranteed experience for the clan, so the strategy was to use that experience to increase the group's combat power. One member observes that they gain nothing by fighting that thing, while another comments that fighting seriously against that would only be a waste of good items. Pencil then loses patience, calling the clan useless and leaving the meeting, infuriating Orsalot. Outside, she reflects alone that the Ashura Kai used to attract everyone's hatred, and the clan's philosophy was to ride on the hate, but since an update made killing other players risky, the clan started avoiding danger, leaving them weak enough not to want to face that. She laments that she has to risk her neck for a simple NPC, but intends to bet everything on her attempt to bury that. Throughout all this time, she was referring to Weatherman, the guardian of Tumpa, one of the 7 most powerful. Finally, she looks up the moon and asks Set to watch her. Back in Rabbits, Sunraku decides that he will go to the prismatic forest cave first with Emil. While boasting about his reasoning and romanticizing his own thoughts, Emil senses a strange presence and turns to the corner, noticing the presence of Siger Zero. Desperate, Sunraku shivers and faces a creepy atmosphere, looking in terror at the attack holder, thinking that the giant had returned to avenge the beating he took from Sunraku, the time they met on a battlefield. On that occasion, the Birdman had used the attack holder as leverage to escape the fight and safely reach Rabbits. Afraid of revenge, he pulls Emil by the arm and runs away. Meanwhile, the Ashura Kai was in the city, searching for the protagonist. One member asks for any sign of the Birdman, while the other replies that no, he must have gone to another area. Suddenly, Sunraku and Emil pass by screaming and running over the bridge where they were. The gang members don't immediately realize that these are their targets, but after noticing the player's name above their heads, they finally locate the enemy, and the gang goes after them, with Cyber Zero also chasing the protagonists right behind. Sunraku and Emil flee over the rooftops of the city, causing a real commotion and drawing the attention of the entire population of rabbits, watching the situation as if it were a sports event. One of the Ashura Kai members assumes that Sunraku is heading to the Iron Ruins, and they decide to set up an ambush for him. During the escape, Emil warns that they are going to the ruins, not the prismatic forest cave as they had agreed, but the Birdman replies that it's a bluff to attract their pursuers. Along the way, the plan is to pass through an alley and divert the path to the Iron Ruins, thus misleading their enemies who will be waiting for them at the wrong gate. Soon the mission comes into play and the Ashura Kai realizes that Sunraku is taking too long to reach the ambush, so they decide to go to the gate leading to the ruins. However, Sunraku was hidden in the middle of the ambush, camouflaged on a street clovis line, and manages to outsmart the opposing clan. Convinced, he brags to Emil, explaining with authority that he learned from Pencildown that to deceive someone, you need to invent a lie that seems true and a truth that seems like a lie. He was already sure he had escaped, but at the door to the ruins, Cyber Zero appears behind him. He and Emil are startled, and Sunraku wonders if that huge and intimidating gentleman is another game-addicted brainless guy. They get tense when she raises her hand, but she was actually sending a friend request. Embarrassed, Cyber Zero mumbles that she would like to be friends with them, but Sunraku can't hear what was said. However, he perceives by the voice that Attack Holder was actually a woman all this time. The game's narrator explains that the friendship system is proof of close bonds within the game, and a friend request is the expression of the intention to build that kind of relationship. However, Sunraku is not convinced of the simplicity of that girl's action. He questions why she sent a friend request and suspects it's an attempt to lower his guard, but realizes that she could have cut him in half if she wanted to. Still in his paranoia, he thinks maybe she wants to build a friendship relationship to spy on him, making him willingly give information about the scenario to her. Meanwhile, the girl remains anxious, waiting for her suitor's response and barely holding back her embarrassment. Convinced of the deception before his eyes, Sunraku tries to decipher her in his mind, analyzing that she was observant enough to discover his bluff and where they were going, but accepts Cyber Zero's friend request. In his mind, he thinks he's getting into the Attack Holder's mind by acting the way she wants, believing that it will make him play her game and still come out victorious. The girl can't believe she finally got what she wanted, noting that in reality she found him by chance and not with a well-thought-out strategy as he was thinking. Then she humbly offers to help the group. Unsure, Sunraku still thinks the girl is plotting something against him and claims that he doesn't like to win games through brute force, so he refuses her help. She thinks she went too far and apologizes for her behavior, but Sunraku reciprocates, apologizing for using her as a pawn. The protagonist says goodbye and leaves, but finds it strange how easily he got rid of a supposed enemy. Emil comments that the girl seems very strong, and Sunraku replies that she seems 5 times more powerful than him. But the rabbit asserts that his friend will still evolve a lot with a Vorpal soul. The boy agrees, even without knowing what that means, and thinks about asking Lycan. While the two continue their journey, Cyber Zero realizes that Emil doesn't have a player name in his head, so he must be an NPC. She regrets that shame has paralyzed her in the conversation with Hizutome, but is glad that she managed to become friends with him in the game. In the meantime, the Ashura Kai had already realized they had been deceived and arrived at the gate to the ruins, but noticed that the Attack Holder was planted there and fled. Thus, the protagonists are free to continue their journey. Far from the city, they are relieved to be able to relax, and Sunraku takes off his ridiculous clothes, while Emil returns to his original form. Emil is excited that the place is lit despite being a cave. Then, Sunraku notices the shiny moss all over the walls of the place. About to reach their destination, Sunraku reflects on how he has had various experiences when exiting some tunnels. He has been greeted with a beautiful view, rifles pointed at him, and shooting stars passing through the sky. However, he had finally arrived at a place where the name reflects what it really is, so they reach the prismatic forest cave. They are moved by the beauty of the cave with its variety of exotic insects, extremely colorful and lively fauna, giant fungi, and even a beetle the size of a car. Sunraku loves discovering areas, and he celebrates as it always generates that thrill in the stomach that defines a good adventure. He spots an insect flying above him and remembers that he needs to get new items since he has no money. So he attacks a butterfly, but misses his first strike. Despite the butterfly having a bulbous body, it was light, making it easy to dodge. However, he knows that it wasn't fast enough for him, and he cuts the insect's belly, collecting the nectar bag from it. According to the item description, it was fun to shoot. Imul praises Sunraku for his birdman's skill, and both are highly motivated by the idea of making money in that fruitful and abundant region. Finally, he confidently states that he will defeat the area's boss. The group continues their journey through the Prism Forest, and Sunraku shows off a throwing knife he bought, traumatized by the eagle, that toxic eagle, the fifth opponent in the practical training he faced in the arena, as his only ability was close combat. Even though it was a consumable item, he now felt more prepared for adversities and continues his item collection, this time attacking a mimetic praying mantis on the way, undoing the insect's camouflage by throwing his newest throwing knife. After some time, he had collected several items, but remembered that he had not defeated one of the forest insects. Soon, the ground they were on trembles and a huge beetle appears. The creature's 5 meters in length make the protagonist hide. The beetle was drinking sap in the territory of the Empire's bees, which attracted the queen and her hive. Sunraku picks up a mushroom from the ground and pretends it's a microphone, narrating the battle he is about to witness. The bees fiercely attack the beetle, protected by its tucked shell, and manage to advance toward the nest, killing some bees along the way. Sunraku tries to involve Imul in his game, but the rabbit is terrible at improvisation and can't become the commentator of the fate broadcast by the birdman, but he is not discouraged. On the contrary, the increasing excitement of the fight between the insects increasingly thrilled Sunraku's commentator spirit, raising the tone of the narration at every moment. The quad beetle's armor threatens to break with so many stings, but soon it takes flight and hits the queen bee with its horn, killing her. Without their leader, the rest of the hive retreats, leaving the sap free for the beetle to eat. Sunraku comments that the mortal wounds give the beetle a regal air, but this secret admiration left the protagonists distracted, and the beetle, realizing their presence, attacks the two who flee. In the run, Sunraku complains that he wanted to get the items from the dead bees, and Imul comments that the beetle is attacking because it thinks they will steal its sap. Then, Sunraku remembers the first item he collected in the prismatic forest and throws the nectar bag at praying mantis on the way. Quickly, the beetle attacks the other insect, attracted by the nectar. Sunraku takes advantage of the distraction of the giant target and attacks the cracks in its armor left by the bees. After several critical sword blows, a quad beetle is defeated and drops several items. Thus, Sunraku's inventory is full, and they continue the adventure. During the walk, Imul comments that it is unfair to take advantage of the work of others, but Sunraku replies that this world is a wild place, and you have to do what is necessary to stand tall. Then he sees some webs spread on the trees in the forest and realizes that the area's boss is a clown spider. They reach the spider's lair and invade it, while the scene reveals the grotesque drawing of a sad clown face on the giant insect's abdomen. The scene shifts to a few moments earlier, where a group of 3 players is also in the prismatic forest. One of them wonders if they are really ready to fight the boss of the area, while another confidently responds that they have defeated everything in their path. However, the girl remains doubtful, and the boy, who was certain they could face the boss, steps into a web and gets stuck. The girls with him tell them to look up, and they all observe the grotesque drawing of a sad clown face on the giant insect's abdomen, leaving them totally surprised. We return to the current moment with Sunraku, and he confirms with Imul that the boss of this area is called the clown spider. Sunraku deduces that they must be getting close, but he sees the area and can't enter because other players are already fighting the boss. Sunraku then sees the boy from earlier falling to the ground and getting up, complaining that the boss is too annoying. He says it's not over yet, but at that moment, the guy gets squished, and Sunraku says, "Rest in peace." The path is now open, and Imul is surprised that Sunraku gave up on praying for the guy so quickly. However, Sunraku asks him to be patient, saying that the guy will simply respawn in Thirdrima. Thanks to Mr. Pancake, Sunraku got some crucial information. He enters the area and sees the 2 girls from earlier trapped in webs at the top. He asks Imul if he minds hanging around and making some comments while Sunraku tries to defeat the clown spider alone his first attempt without taking any damage. Imul asks if Sunraku really just wants him to watch, and Sunraku confirms, already heading into action. He is going to fight a spider, so the webs will get denser the higher he goes. From the skills he learned while leveling up in the arena, perhaps his best bet is the boat jump skill. Sunraku uses it to dodge a giant web ball and mentions that the boss probably uses this to eliminate the unprepared. Luckily, he saw the boss using this attack earlier. The giant ball falls towards Imul, but he dodges, impressed with everything. Meanwhile, Sunraku continues climbing and balancing on the webs. Imul asks if they are not sticky, and Sunraku explains that the radial threads of a spider web are not sticky. but it makes it a bit more challenging to find a stable position. At this moment, more web balls start falling and Sunraku uses his level 6 acceleration skill. He mentions it's not much different from running through the forest. Emil is impressed and also has to dodge the web balls reaching the ground. Sunraku manages to reach the spider and says it's time for hiding and throwing things to end. The giant spider attacks with one of its legs, but Sunraku dodges and delivers a powerful loop cut, followed by a charging cut. The spider writhes and begins to fall from the top. Sunraku thinks that a fall from that height should cause a lot of damage. However, at that moment, the spider tries to produce more web to hold on. Sunraku doesn't want to allow that and throws a throwing knife, preventing the spider from using the web to secure itself, causing it to fall to the ground. Emil comments that it seemed painful and Sunraku thinks that maybe that is not enough to defeat it. At this moment, the spider starts getting up, but a bunch of web balls start falling on it. Sunraku, at the top of the area, is cutting several webs holding giant web balls, mentioning that it's too easy to aim at a target of that size. He accurately targeted the boss of the area. Emil celebrates, saying that Sunraku can easily escape like this, finding it entertaining. However, the boss is not defeated. Sunraku descends to the ground towards it and says that if he can't defeat a boss face-to-face, he will never reach Lycan's level. Sunraku attacks the boss again, launching several critical strikes, finally defeating the clown spider and completing the hunt. Now Sunraku asks Emil what he thinks. Since it was the first time without taking damage, Emil says that he is a man of his word. Sunraku comments that it was too easy. At that moment, an email arrives from the pencil warrior for Sunraku and his friend from other games here in Shangri-La. He is using the nickname Waikatsu, and he just defeated the giant slug area boss alone. At Rockroll, the manager is talking again with Rie. She says that Rie and Hizutome becoming friends in the game is a good thing. Rie confirms and says that she sent the friend request and he accepted, but she surely wouldn't have succeeded without the manager's help. Rie says that Hizutome is indeed incredible. He not only skipped the first city, but also managed to get Vorpal Rabbit as a partner, even though everyone thought it was impossible to tame them. At this moment, a customer enters the store, momentarily interrupting their conversation because Rie thought it might be Hizutome entering the store. The manager Mana says that he hasn't been there for days, wondering if he spent all his time in Shangri-La. Rie ponders what he will do. He might be the first to defeat a unique monster. Rie laughs at that and says that even he wouldn't be able to do that. But as soon as she says that, the thought crosses her mind that maybe he could. A few moments later, Rie is walking on the sidewalk and stops for a moment. When she looks to the side, she notices that Hizutome is in a store next to her reading a magazine. She can't believe it and steps back, hiding and discreetly looking at him. Hizutome is reading a magazine where Katsuo gave an interview. Katsuo's real name is Kaiwomi, a professional gamer who talks a lot of nonsense. Hizutome bets that he gave the magazine editor a hard time. In the same magazine, Hizutome sees that the game Shangri-La will have a major summer update, the Cut Sea, the colonization fleet, the new continent, and a new class. Hizutome thinks that's what Pencil Gun was talking about the day before. The scene is then cut to the Unite Rounds game with Pencil Gun wondering when they last gathered in that game. Was it when idiots like Sunraku and Katsuo attacked her castle fortified the E-Men? Katsuo answers the question, saying it was Sunraku's idea. Eliminating the monarch seems amazing, he said. But Sunraku argues that Katsuo was too excited about it. Katsuo agrees, saying he didn't expect to end up blowing up the castle and all its servants. The incident of the Pencil-Don dynasty, they will talk about it until they shut down the Unite Round servers. Sunraku continues, saying that Pencil-Don is trying to act calm, but you can tell she's irritated by it. Pencil-Don, calm on the outside with a smile but filled with hatred inside, puts the sword on the table and says that now that they are all well and relaxed, she asks if they can get to the main point, and they both agree. Sunraku bets that she called them there to play Shangri-La together. Pencil-Don says it's not much time, so she gets straight to the point. She asks if they want to defeat the unique monster Weatherman, the guardian of the tomb, just the three of them. They both stay silent for a moment, looking at each other, and then shout in surprise. Katsuo asks if it's the same category of monster that Sunraku fought and if it's serious. He expresses interest in fighting one of those unique monsters. Pencil confirms that it's exactly that, one of the 7 most powerful in Shangri-La Frontier, Weatherman, the guardian of the tomb. Sunraku thought she was inviting them to attack a high-level clan, but didn't think of something like that. He asks if only the 3 of them would stand a chance. He knows nothing about this Weatherman. Pencil responds that it's not like they can defeat the monster with numbers alone. She reveals that they went after him with the top 15 of Ashura Kai and were defeated. Katsuo asks if it's the type of monster that gets more attack and HP when more people are sent against it. Pencil says that's part of it and that she can't say more until they have an agreement. They have only one chance, and they will carry it out in 2 weeks on the night of the new moon, right after the big summer update. That day it will work. The boys are pensive, and Pencilben asks what they think. Sunraku reflects on why right after the update and why invite a novice pair in Shangri-La. Wouldn't she prefer to defeat some higher-level elites? Pencilben says that if they are concerned about their levels, it won't be a problem. What she seeks is only pure player skill. Hence, Katsuo, a professional player, and Sunraku, who likes bad games. Sunraku asks if she's sure they are comparable. Katsuo counters, saying Sunraku is free to back off and that he's still criticizing his tips. Pencilben asks again what they think and says she can always offer more rewards. Sunraku thinks the conversation is over and also thinks she's hiding something. So she wants them to buy into the idea, she better tell them everything. They give an evil smile and Pencilben asks if they will start their strategic meeting. At that moment, the scene returns to Hizutome in the store, returning the magazine to the shelf. Leaving the store on the sidewalk, Ria calls him with great difficulty. She says good afternoon, stuttering, and then smiles. Hizutome doesn't understand anything and tries to remember her name. He's almost certain she was in his class last year. He thinks her name had something to do with Ga. His brain stops functioning for a moment, but then he shouts excitedly for having remembered, saying that she is Sega. She confirms that she is Rei's Sega, and he celebrates that he remembered. She asks if he was shopping, and Hizutome confirms and asks what she was doing. Ria replies that she's going to judo training now. She mentions that Mana from Rock Roll told her he started playing Shangri-La Frontier, and he confirms that he did. Rie says with great difficulty that she also plays SLF. At this moment, Hizutome thinks to himself that even girls from wealthy families play SLF. Rie asks if they could play together, and Hizutome apologizes, saying he received an email and needs a moment. The email is from Pencilben, telling him to quickly log into the game. She's sending several emails. Hizutome is even afraid. He apologizes again and says he has to go and that they'll see each other later. Rie understands and apologizes for holding him back. She's happy and excited that they talked so much and also noticed that he drinks a lot of energy drinks. They'll probably play SLF for a while, so maybe they'll meet again. Back in his room while starting the game, Hizutome reflects, lamenting that he should have asked Sega's name. When he enters Shangri-La, he tells Emil that he wants to ask something. He informs the rabbit that in 2 weeks he's going to start a fight with Weatherman, the guardian of the tomb, so it seems he'll have to leave the bunny out of the group. Emil looks very scared and summons the unique setting, running away screaming that he has to tell his dad about it. Sunraku doesn't understand anything and he's late to go to Pencilben. Remembering the trio's meeting, he remembers a question he asked Pencilben. He said he has an NPC in his group, so what would he do? Pencilben said that if he cares about the rabbit, he should keep him out of the group because in Shangri-La, when an NPC dies, it never comes back. Inhaling from his classic pipe filled with unknown substances, Vash welcomed the arrival of Sunraku and his son, Emil, while continuing to emanate smoke. The master rabbit revealed that his offspring had already spilled the beans, but he preferred to hear directly from the protagonist what this request was all about. After all, everyone knew it would be foolish to pick a fight with someone who should have been dead long ago. Upon hearing this, Sunraku couldn't fathom why Weatherman should already be dead. Furthermore, he emphasized that this event had started out of nowhere and was of great importance. An RPG based on the world and its characters was the best response to this situation. However, he decided to proceed with caution, knowing that using his cards at the right moment might yield valuable information about the target. To convince himself that he was capable, he recalled defeating Feria. Convincing Vash was just another challenge. He kept in mind that the key phrase was Vorpal Soul. During Sunraku's solitary reflection, Vash drew from his smoking pipe again, calmly asserting that the Birdman was still weak. Humbly, Sunraku agreed that he wasn't entering this fight thinking he had everything to win. He clarified that he wasn't aiming to confront Weatherman directly, but to support a more qualified companion for this mission. With that said, he tried to extract information about the target from the rabbit, asking if he knew what was happening with Weatherman, the tomb guardian. Vash had no idea as he hadn't seen him for a long time. Sunraku explained that there was a group of PKs trying to use Weatherman to become stronger, treating the undead as a tool. However, to ease the situation, he informed that the mind behind the attack was technically part of Sunraku's group and would do unthinkable things to defeat Weatherman. Still disliking the idea, Vash responded that regardless of where or with whom Sunraku was, having no chance of victory would always be improvement. To taunt his pupil, he also asked if Sunraku thought the meaning of Vorpal Soul was to meet death. The protagonist stood his ground, insisting that he would never enter a fight without the intention of winning. He continued to emphasize Pencilben, highlighting her will and ability to defeat this enemy. Then he quoted a phrase she told him, stating that they only have one chance to kill or die, nothing more. As he developed his reasoning, Sunraku's voice became firmer and his posture gained confidence. Modestly, he admitted he was still inexperienced and weak, but had 2 weeks to turn youthful foolishness into the courage of someone facing a champion. After this entire speech, Vash slowly exhaled the smoke, whispering the word honor, as if Sunraku didn't even know the meaning of it. He then recounted how peculiar and serious Weatherman was, incapable of moderating himself. For instance, he lost his wife due to a trivial lie and ended up with that immortal body. The Tomb Guardian is a living corpse, condemned to never rest again. As a sign of respect, someone should perhaps defeat him so that he can finally have his deserved rest. Having said that, Vash began to leave the place, stating that he didn't think it was a good idea, but wouldn't hinder anyone, especially since it was Imol's request. In fact, he decided to give a little help to strengthen the group. Thus, they arrived at the forge and Sunraku realized he had advanced to the next stage in the event. Vash called Bilak, another sister of Imol, making Sunraku wonder if Vash was the father of the entire population of rabbits. The brown rabbit approached the protagonist and asked if he was the guy her father and sister talked so much about, teasing him by saying he looked like Yvel. Even though Sunraku had no idea who that was, he felt offended, thinking it was another rabbit. Finally, the master of all called the Birdman to take out the Vorpal weapons. With the weapons in hand, Vash praised the blades, saying they recognized Sunraku as their true owner and had a beautiful appearance. He then stated that he would realize them. Sunraku had no idea what that meant, and Imol explained that realizing a weapon meant making them true, although she didn't go into details. Bilak got excited and asked her father if he would finally pick up the hammer, and Vash replied that it wouldn't be fun to stay home doing nothing while someone challenged that corpse that was working overtime on Earth. Having said that, Bilek rushed to the forge, and her father asked Sunraku if he had any interesting materials collected from a higher-level enemy. Sunraku accessed his menu and saw that the strongest monster he had faced was Likin, but he had taken a beating. Additionally, Sunraku had sold all the items he got from the mud digger. However, he remembered a material that could be useful and handed it to Vash. It was a quad beetle shell, a huge insect that resisted the attacks of an entire beehive. Using the shell, Vash prepared to forge and grabbed the hammer, while Bilak said that Sunraku was very lucky to witness this scene as her father hadn't done it in a long time. Admiring the master rabbit, she explained how her brother inherited the kingdom of rabbits while she got the forge. Vash, the father, is a master craftsman, a title given only to those who master the art of blacksmithing completely. But not only that, he is also an elder, one of the few who can forge the lost weapons of the divine. The combination of these two titles makes Vash a divine artisan, the most skilled type possible. As soon as the master rabbit took the blade out of the fire, Emil knew what was coming and became even more excited. Her father began to forge, and with each strike he made, magical circles emanated from the weapon and then returned. Since Sunraku was confused by the process, Bilek explained that realizing a weapon meant reading the memories and experiences it gained in battle and transforming all that into the true form of the equipment. The strongest enemies Sunraku faced would be used in this process. For this reason, Bilak was very curious to see how his weapon would turn out, as the protagonist had faced Likan. At this point, Vash began to pronounce that the forge's fire against the sky was dormant, and when Sunraku threatened to ask why, his daughters asked him to stay silent. Then Vash began to sing a long song about sparks covered in darkness meeting a dancing hammer, and about the sword that shines reflecting light and dispelling darkness, while striking the hammer in time with the song. Everyone around was focused on Vash and his melody and rhythm, enchanted by the poetry he invoked to trigger the magic circles, forming a new and powerful weapon. After the song, Vash finally announced the Vorpal cleaver in its true form and name, the blades of the waxing and waning moon. The master explained that one needed the other to make sense, as if the two completed each other. Sunraku wasted no time and quickly went to examine his newest acquisition. Reading the description, he learned that the waxing blade granted benefits when fighting a higher-level opponent, delivering successive critical hits that reduced their HP. However, a power bonus was added to the next attack. As for the waning blade, it restored HP when landing successive critical hits. In addition, he noted that some consecutive critical hits could increase the fusion bar, making the boy extremely excited about the weapon's ability to fuse. However, as soon as he tried to equip his swords, the game informed him that it wasn't possible because he didn't have the minimum required attributes. Looking at his build, he realized he needed a total of 150 points. Currently, he had only 57. Since he gained 5 points per level, he needed to reach level 50 to use the new weapon. Sunraku knelt in despair while Vash laughed and said that the boy would need to level up a bit to get there. After Sunraku lamented his situation in rabbits, he finally traveled to Third Rima heading to the Serpent's Apple. Upon arriving, he apologized to Pencildon and Katso for the delay. While the woman was calm and friendly, Katso grumbled that the Birdman should have arrived 3 hours ago. Sunraku justified that he was advancing in a unique scenario until he came across the name Weatherman, so he thought it was worth continuing. Pencildon became interested in the conversation and said Sunraku could speak, as it would make them even. This provoked Katso's anger. Thus, Sunraku teased the boy, saying he took the name from a tuna, but Katso retaliated, saying that Birdman had no moral authority to mock anyone's character. Pencildon interrupted and revealed that she chose that isolated place for the meeting in an attempt to let the group rest a bit, making Sunraku understand why it was so difficult to find that location. Thus, she got straight to the point and asked what information he had gathered. After telling everything to his companion, Pencildon went over everything, reminding that Vash said Weatherman, the tomb guardian, was a corpse that should have died. When Katso asked if they were going to face some kind of undead, she replied that the enemy moved strangely irregularly at the beginning of the battle. She thought Weatherman was a cyborg, but the fact that he was some kind of zombie explained a lot. Sunraku asked if everything he said could be used in the strategy until Pencildon stood up without answering and said she needed to take care of some things, ordering the group to split up until nightfall. Sunraku asked what they should do in the meantime, and the leader gave them a fishing rod and a map, telling them to gain experience in the Iron Ruins, informing that they would understand the reason for all this when they got there. However, as she headed out of the tavern, Pencildon noticed that Emil was hanging around Sunraku's neck and asked the Birdman if he really thought that disguise would work. With a cynical tone, he turned to her and tried to convince the woman that it was the latest fashion. The leader contemplated whether she would do anything about it, but ultimately decided to let it go and get out of there. With that, Sunraku and Katso began to plan a safe route to the Iron Ruins until Emil started to feel unbearable pain in his ear and asked Sunraku if he could adjust them a bit. Katso thought he heard something and was confused, while Sunraku tried to pretend that nothing was happening. However, the friends soon stood up in alarm, thinking it was Sunraku's equipment that was talking. As a result, the Birdman gave up and freed Emil from his neck, explaining to Katso that he thought it would be fun to see how long it would take for someone to notice that there was a rabbit hanging around his neck. Katso noticed that Emil was that unique NPC and asked to see the rabbit like a child with a new toy, then grabbed the poor creature and started swinging it in the air, squeezing its cheeks as if it were a stuffed animal. After that, the group began their journey to the ruins, and when they reached the entrance, Katso was still complaining that he wanted a unique NPC for himself. Sunraku, on the other hand, was fed up with his partner's tantrum and complained that he didn't want to hear any more nonsense and that they should concentrate on reaching level 50. Katso heard his friend and calmed down, but remembered that it was his first time being part of a group in SLF, while Sunraku replied that it was also his first time with another player. Arriving at the entrance of the Divine Iron Ruins, they noticed how the architecture was extremely different from anything they had seen so far in the rest of the world, indicating that this place could be quite unique and exciting. Next week, we'll have more of this anime as soon as the new episode is released, so go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the like button below to support this video. See you guys.